The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for centuries, their power and influence stretching across countless planets. To the Council, Earth was a tiny, insignificant speck, one of many weak, primitive planets that they had long since written off. The people of Earth lived in ignorance of the power struggles that took place in the stars above, unaware that their very existence was being disregarded by the most powerful force in the galaxy. Earth had always been a target for exploitation, ignored or dismissed as nothing more than a backwater world, until now. The camera zooms in on a dark, cold void of space. It's quiet, almost serene, until the peace is shattered by an unexpected alarm. The alert flashes across the Galactic Council's command center. Security systems blare, lights flicker on, and tension fills the air as a high-pitched siren echoes throughout the massive chamber. All eyes are glued to the central monitor, where an unusual signal has just appeared. A slow realization sets in among the Council leaders. Something is coming, something unlike anything they've faced before. The signal's source is traced back to the very edges of known space. A fleet, human ships, are moving towards the heart of the galaxy. The Council's best minds are confused and terrified. How could this be possible? How could the humans have built such a force, and how could they have done it without anyone noticing? It was as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath. A massive fleet, once hidden from prying eyes, was now on its way to the Galactic Council's doorstep. The Council, which had grown so complacent in its centuries of unchecked power, was now scrambling to understand the threat. At the heart of the Council, the Supreme Counselor, a figure feared by all, stares at the images flickering across the screen. His face, usually cold and emotionless, tightens in disbelief. The fleet is unlike anything he's ever seen. The ships are sleek, dark, and massive. Their designs are advanced beyond anything the Council has ever encountered. Each vessel is equipped with technologies far beyond what Earth should have been capable of. Cloaking devices, plasma weapons, advanced artificial intelligence, these humans, whom the Council had once dismissed as weak, had somehow developed an overwhelming force. Impossible, the Supreme Counselor mutters to himself. He had underestimated Earth, and now that mistake was staring him in the face. The humans were coming for them. The Council had always believed that Earth's military was insignificant, no match for the power of the galaxy's ruling elite. They had assumed Earth would never rise to challenge them, but now it was clear, the humans had been hiding in plain sight, quietly building their strength, waiting for the right moment. The moment had come. As the humans' ships grow closer, the tension on the Council's flagship becomes unbearable. Leaders from every corner of the galaxy are linked in to discuss what to do. The fear in their voices is palpable. The vastness of space, which had once been their playground, suddenly feels small, almost claustrophobic. We must retaliate, one of the Council's generals suggests, his voice trembling with urgency. The humans must be eradicated before they become a real threat. The Supreme Counselor, however, remains silent for a moment. His fingers drum against the command console. His mind is racing. A war was about to begin, and he knew that once it started, there would be no going back. The camera zooms in on a pair of hands, human hands, gripping the controls of a sleek warship. The scene shifts from the cold, sterile command center of the Council to the bustling bridge of one of the human ships. Here, the atmosphere is tense, but there is no fear. Only determination. Captain Blake Carter stands at the helm of the largest and most advanced ship in the human fleet, the Perseverance. His dark eyes scan the vast, empty space ahead, watching as the rest of the fleet moves into position. The crew around him is focused, working in unison, but Carter's mind is elsewhere, his thoughts are on the mission ahead, and the ghosts of his past that he can never escape. Blake Carter is a man driven by two things, a deep desire for revenge and an unshakable duty to protect Earth. Years ago, his family was taken from him in a brutal attack by the Galactic Council. They had destroyed his home, annihilated his loved ones, and left him with nothing but memories and a thirst for vengeance. It was this tragic event that pushed him to lead humanity's fight against the Council, and it was this pain that made him unyielding in his resolve. The crew of the Perseverance knows that they are not just fighting for Earth's survival, they are fighting to reclaim their pride, their dignity, and their place in the galaxy. The humans know they are the underdogs, and yet they have never been more determined. Carter gives a quick order to his first officer, Lieutenant Maria Lopez, as she stands beside him on the bridge. "Prepare the fleet. We're going in." Lopez nods, her face grim. She knows the stakes of this mission. "Aye, Captain. Fleet is ready for deployment." Carter turns to face her, his eyes burning with intensity. "This is it. For every man, woman, and child we've lost. We end this today." As the fleet moves into formation, Blake Carter's mind flashes back to the day he lost everything. He was just a young boy, watching as the Galactic Council's forces descended upon his home. The flames that engulfed his world still haunt him to this day. His thirst for revenge is as strong as his desire to protect humanity. He will not allow anyone else to feel the same pain he has endured. Behind Carter, the fleet hums with life. Hundreds of ships, large and small, form a massive formation. Each ship is a testament to human ingenuity, built with technology that rivals the best in the galaxy. They are not just ships, they are symbols of hope. Cloaking devices render them invisible to the enemy's sensors. Their plasma weapons are capable of reducing entire fleets to rubble. Each vessel is crewed by the best and brightest soldiers, scientists, and engineers Earth has to offer. The fleet's mission is clear: destroy the Galactic Council's power, free the galaxy from their oppression, and secure Earth's place in the stars. But as the ships move through the darkness of space, Carter can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The Council might not have been prepared for humanity's military might, but the Council had always had something up its sleeve. What if their enemies had a weapon they hadn't anticipated? Suddenly, a voice crackles over the communications channel, breaking through Carter's thoughts. It's Lopez again, her voice urgent. "Captain, we're picking up strange readings on our sensors. The Council is moving faster than expected." Carter straightens. The war was about to start, and it wasn't going to be easy. The tension in the fleet is palpable. The Council is preparing to retaliate, and Earth's fleet is about to make its move. The first shots of the war will soon be fired, and humanity's survival depends on how well they can outsmart their powerful enemies. Blake Carter stands at the front of the human fleet, knowing that he has only one chance to lead his people to victory. The fate of Earth, and the entire galaxy, rests on the success of this mission. As the ships move toward the Council's stronghold, the camera zooms out, revealing the vastness of space, and the impending battle that will change the galaxy forever. The war has begun, and Earth's secret fleet has arrived. The battle had begun. The vast expanse of space seemed calm, too calm. But within moments, the silence shattered as two enormous fleets, one human, one of the Galactic Council, prepared to clash. The Galactic Council, led by the Supreme Counselor, had long held the galaxy in its iron grip. They had conquered countless worlds, defeated countless enemies, and crushed any who dared to challenge their supremacy. The Council was confident, too confident. They believed this would be just another victory, another simple conquest to add to their record. But they had gravely underestimated humanity. As the two fleets neared each other, the Council's warships bristled with weapons. The Supreme Counselor's flagship, the Dominion, was the largest and most powerful of all the Council's ships. Its dark, imposing silhouette loomed ahead, surrounded by hundreds of smaller ships. The Council had no reason to expect anything other than a swift victory. After all, they had superior technology, fleets twice the size of the human forces, and decades of experience in warfare. What the Council did not know, however, was that humanity had been planning for this day in secret, biding their time. As the two fleets moved closer, Blake Carter's fleet sprung into action. Without warning, the human warships activated their cloaking devices. The dark void of space seemed to swallow them whole, as the human ships vanished from sight. The Council's fleet scanned the stars in every direction, their sensors frantically searching for any sign of the invisible enemy. The Council's commanders exchanged confused glances. Where had they gone? How could they have vanished so quickly? "Activate full sensor sweep," one of the Council officers barked. "Find them, now." But it was too late. The human fleet had already positioned itself, silently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Suddenly, out of the blackness, a massive human warship reappeared in full view, a dark shadow emerging from the void. Without warning, it unleashed a torrent of plasma fire, the bright blue beams slicing through the dark sky. The blast struck one of the Council's ships, and in an instant, its shields flickered and collapsed, leaving it vulnerable to further attack. Explosions rocked the enemy vessel as it was torn apart. The first shot of the battle had been fired, and humanity had just shown the Galactic Council that they were not the pushovers they had been made out to be. The Council fleet immediately retaliated, launching volleys of energy weapons in return. But the human fleet was ready. The human ships danced around the incoming fire, using their advanced combat tactics to avoid the worst of it. Their cloaking devices made it nearly impossible for the Council to get a precise lock on their targets. The humans were more agile, their strategies more unpredictable. In the chaos, the human fleet unleashed more firepower, targeting key weak points on the Council ships. The plasma beams and energy missiles streaked through the stars, devastating the Council's once impenetrable shields. The Council's warships, with their massive size and overwhelming firepower, found themselves outmaneuvered by the human ships, which used speed and precision to strike at weak points in their enemies' defenses. The battle was fast-paced, with explosions lighting up the blackness of space. The Perseverance, Captain Blake Carter's flagship, moved with deadly precision. It was a beautiful sight, a sleek, dark vessel with gleaming metal surfaces that reflected the starry sky. It appeared almost ghostly, flickering in and out of sight as it activated and deactivated its cloaking technology. From the bridge, Carter could see the chaos unfolding in front of him, the entire battlefield illuminated by the flash of plasma fire and the eruption of enemy ships exploding into brilliant bursts of light. It was the kind of battle he had dreamed of, a chance to finally strike back against those who had taken everything from him. But the cost was becoming clear: this was a brutal, bloody fight, and not everyone would make it out alive. One of the Council's ships, larger than any of the others, loomed in the distance. The Dominion. It was a monstrous warship, bristling with weaponry. The Perseverance and its allies had been moving closer to it, but now, Carter could see it preparing to launch an offensive. Its weapons powered up, and massive energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. "Brace for impact," Blake shouted over the comms. The Perseverance swerved, narrowly avoiding the beams. The other ships of the fleet weren't so lucky. One of them, a smaller vessel, was hit directly by a plasma beam, and it disintegrated in a flash of fiery destruction. "Status report," Carter demanded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Shields are holding, Captain." Lieutenant Lopez responded, but her voice was tight with strain. "But we've lost the Stormbreaker. We can't afford to lose any more ships." Carter clenched his fists. This was just the beginning. The battle was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the fight raged on, Captain Carter's mind raced. He had led his fleet to this moment, but the cost of victory was already becoming clear. He couldn't afford to lose any more good men and women. His eyes scanned the battlefield, watching the progress of his ships as they took on the superior forces of the Council. Then came a blow that he hadn't expected. Lieutenant Bonner, one of Carter's most trusted officers, was on a smaller warship, a daring pilot with a knack for strategy and an unshakable loyalty to Carter. Bonner had been in countless battles, always at Carter's side, and had been with him through thick and thin. Now, Bonner was faced with a choice that would seal his fate. The Perseverance was in a brutal dogfight with one of the Council's largest cruisers. The cruiser's shields were too strong, and the human fleet had failed to break through. But Lieutenant Bonner had an idea. He saw an opening, a gap in the cruiser's defenses. "Captain." Bonner's voice crackled over the comms. "I can take out their command center. If I crash into the cruiser's bridge, we'll disable their flagship." Carter's voice shook with urgency. "No. Bonner, you can't do that. There's no way you'll survive." But Bonner didn't listen. With a determined look on his face, he steered his ship directly into the path of the enemy cruiser, locking on to its weak point. He activated his ship's final attack sequence and sent a barrage of missiles directly at the cruiser's hull, causing an explosion that shook the entire battlefield. But it was too late. Bonner's ship exploded in a violent burst of light, taking the cruiser's command center with it. The Council's ship lost power and was left adrift in space, its defenses disabled. The human fleet had won this round, but at a heavy cost. Carter's heart dropped as he watched the explosion from the bridge of the Perseverance. Bonner was gone. A vital part of the human fleet was now lost, and Carter could feel the grief welling up inside him. Bonner had sacrificed himself for the good of humanity. His voice was quiet but firm as he spoke to the fleet. "This fight, this is for Bonner. We win this, for him. And for everyone else we've lost." As the smoke of the battle clears, the human fleet pushes forward. The Council is reeling, having lost one of its most powerful ships, but they're not finished yet. The battle is far from over, and the Council will not give up easily. Blake Carter steels himself, knowing that the war ahead will only get more brutal, and that there are many more lives at stake. The human fleet has proven its worth, but the true test is still to come. Humanity's fight for survival has only just begun. The silence that had settled over the battlefield was short-lived. The Galactic Council, reeling from the unexpected strength of humanity's secret fleet, quickly realized that they had made a fatal miscalculation. For millennia, they had conquered countless species, subjugated entire worlds, and crushed any who dared to challenge them. But this time was different. Earth was not the insignificant, weak planet they had once believed it to be. Humanity had fought back, and the Council was feeling the weight of their underestimation. Despite the surprising resistance, the Council was far from beaten. They had one last weapon up their sleeve, an overwhelming force that, if used correctly, would break the back of the human resistance. "Activate the orbital bombardment," the Supreme Councilor's cold, calculating voice echoed through the command center of the Dominion. It was an order that would change everything. The Council had kept this weapon hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash it. And now, they had no choice but to use it. The human fleet, still in the middle of the battle with the Council's ships, was caught off guard when the first wave of attack came from above. Suddenly, the sky turned bright. Bright beams of light shot down from space, cutting through the atmosphere and slamming into Earth's surface. The first strike landed in a major city, and in an instant, the city was obliterated. A massive explosion shook the planet, sending shockwaves that rattled the human fleet in orbit. But this was just the beginning. More beams rained down, each one landing with the force of a nuclear bomb. The ground shook violently as entire regions of Earth were turned into smoldering craters. Buildings were reduced to rubble, entire forests were wiped out, and millions of lives were lost in an instant. The devastation was massive, and the sheer scale of destruction was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. From the bridge of the Perseverance, Captain Blake Carter watched in horror as the bombardment continued. He could see the flashes of light on the surface of Earth, each one representing the death of countless innocent lives. His stomach churned as he thought of the people who had no chance to escape the devastation. Entire cities were being wiped off the map, and it felt as though the entire world was crumbling before his eyes. On the ground, Earth's military responded with everything they had. High-tech shields were deployed in a desperate attempt to defend key areas. Anti-aircraft missiles launched into the sky, targeting the Council's orbital weapons. Some missiles hit their marks, creating dazzling explosions in the atmosphere, but it was clear that Earth's defense systems were no match for the Council's overwhelming firepower. The bombardment continued relentlessly, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. Back in space, the human fleet was reeling from the surprise attack. The cloaking devices that had once been their greatest advantage were now useless. The Council's massive bombardment weapon made any attempt at stealth meaningless. The human ships fought valiantly, but they were no match for the Council's unrelenting assault. One by one, the ships of Blake Carter's fleet took heavy damage. Plasma shields flickered and collapsed, leaving their vulnerable hulls exposed to the Council's devastating firepower. As the bombardment continued, Carter's voice came through the comms, his tone grim but determined. "We won't back down. Keep fighting, everyone. Hold the line." But even as he spoke, he knew the situation was growing more dire with each passing second. The human fleet was being pushed to the brink. Their ships were battered, their shields failing, and their crew members were being lost in the chaos. The once proud fleet that had held its own against the Council's forces was now on the verge of collapse. It seemed as though the human resistance might soon come to an end. Carter stood in the command center of the Perseverance, staring at the tactical display as his fleet fought to hold off the overwhelming onslaught. He clenched his jaw, determination burning in his eyes. He could see the toll the battle was taking. His officers, his crew, and his friends were all fighting with everything they had, but the Council's orbital bombardment was simply too much. Their ships were taking hits from all sides, and several were already lost in the devastating barrage. "We can't take much more of this," Lieutenant Lopez said through the comms, her voice strained with exhaustion. "The shields are failing, Captain. We're losing ships at an alarming rate." Carter's heart tightened as he looked out the viewport, watching as one of the smaller human ships, the Valor, was hit directly by a beam from the Council's weapon. The explosion was deafening, and the ship was reduced to a mass of twisted metal in an instant. "Captain," Lieutenant Bonner's voice came through the comms, quieter now. "We've lost contact with the Phoenix and the Spearhead. They've been wiped out." A pang of grief struck Carter's heart. Bonner, the officer who had sacrificed himself in the earlier battle, had been a close friend, and now, another group of brave soldiers had been lost. With each passing moment, it felt as though the human fleet was slowly being overwhelmed by the might of the Council. Despite the growing sense of hopelessness, Carter refused to let despair take hold. He had led his men and women into this battle, and he would not abandon them now. He had to find a way to fight back. He wasn't about to let the Council destroy Earth without putting up a fight. "Get me the fleet status," Carter shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "We're losing, Captain," came the grim response from his tactical officer. "Most of the ships are heavily damaged. We're down to just a few functional vessels, and the bombardment is too much for us to handle." But even in the face of this overwhelming assault, Captain Carter refused to accept defeat. He knew that the key to surviving wasn't just in defending, it was in fighting back, showing the Council that humanity would not kneel. "We're not finished yet," Carter said, his voice unwavering. "We may be outgunned, but we still have the will to fight. We'll make them regret underestimating us." With Earth's surface now in ruins, the human fleet was forced into a desperate final stand. The bombardment had devastated the planet, but the war was not over yet. As the Council's forces continued their attack, Carter and his fleet knew they had one last chance to turn the tide. They couldn't let the Council claim victory now. The stakes were higher than ever. This was no longer just a battle for Earth's survival. It was a fight for the very future of humanity. The next few minutes would be critical. Carter's mind raced as he formulated a plan. He knew that they couldn't win this battle through brute force alone, they would have to use strategy, cunning, and everything they had left to hold their ground. They would need to outsmart the Council, to strike when they least expected it. As the human fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of battle, the question lingered in the air: would humanity survive, or was the end near? The odds were stacked against them, but Captain Carter wasn't ready to give up. One final push was all that stood between them and victory, or total annihilation. The once proud human fleet was on the brink of collapse. The Galactic Council's orbital bombardment had left Earth in ruins, and their relentless forces were crushing the remnants of humanity's resistance. Captain Blake Carter watched, helpless, as his fleet was battered and beaten. His crew had fought bravely, but the overwhelming power of the Council seemed unstoppable. The situation was dire. The once flourishing world that had launched a secret fleet to fight back against the Council was now teetering on the edge of annihilation. It felt as though everything humanity had fought for, every life lost, every sacrifice made, was slipping away. Carter stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, his gaze fixed on the shattered tactical display, his heart heavy with the weight of failure. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, an unexpected voice crackled through the comms, breaking the silence. "Captain Carter, we have one more option. The X-9 interceptor." Carter's eyes widened. "What is that? I thought that project was still in the prototype stage." "It was. But it's ready. We have a fleet of them, Captain, waiting in the shadows. They're humanity's last hope." The X-9 interceptor had been a top-secret project, designed with cutting-edge technology that was far beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. A new generation of warship, equipped with advanced AI and phase-shifting technology, the X-9 interceptors had the ability to phase through solid matter, including enemy ships. They could phase directly into the heart of the Council's fleet and strike at their core, undetectable, unstoppable, and lethal. The Council had never seen such a weapon. Their ships were designed to withstand conventional firepower, but no one had ever thought of a ship that could phase through their defenses and attack them from within. The X-9 interceptors were humanity's ace in the hole, and now, at the most critical moment, they were about to be unleashed. "Activate the fleet," Carter ordered, his voice filled with renewed determination. "This is humanity's last chance. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The atmosphere on the Perseverance shifted. Crew members exchanged quick glances, a sense of hope and anticipation growing. The X-9 interceptors were humanity's secret weapon, and for the first time in days, there was a flicker of hope on the horizon. Carter's mind raced as the X-9 fleet moved into position, ready to phase into the heart of the Council's forces. As the X-9 interceptors powered up, the air around them crackled with energy. The ship's phase-shifting technology hummed, and then, in an instant, they disappeared from sight. The entire fleet of interceptors phased into the heart of the Council's massive armada. The effect was immediate. The X-9 ships emerged within the enemy fleet, appearing seemingly out of nowhere. They phased through enemy ships, tearing through their hulls with surgical precision. The Council's massive warships, which had once seemed invulnerable, now found themselves vulnerable to attacks from within. Sparks flew as the interceptors unleashed their advanced weaponry, ripping through enemy shields and destroying critical systems in a matter of seconds. The first ship to fall was a massive Council battleship, its armor plating no match for the phase-shifting weapons of the X-9. The ship's core exploded in a flash of light, and debris scattered through the void of space. The interceptors didn't stop there. They continued their assault, weaving through the enemy fleet, striking with deadly accuracy. Inside the X-9 flagship, Captain Carter stood at the helm, watching as his crew engaged the enemy in close-quarters combat. The X-9 flagship was the heart of the attack, its advanced AI guiding them through the chaos of battle. Carter's fingers flew over the controls, giving orders as the battle unfolded. The ship phased in and out of enemy vessels, each shift bringing them closer to victory. "All units, focus on the enemy command ships. Take out their command and control systems." Carter's voice was steady, his resolve unwavering. The interceptors followed his orders to the letter. They phased into the heart of enemy ships, tearing through them with precision. The Council's forces, once confident in their superiority, were now overwhelmed. They had never faced an enemy that could fight back in such a way, and the X-9 fleet was changing the tide of the battle. With every passing moment, the Council's once imposing armada began to fall apart. As the battle raged on, Carter stood in the center of the chaos, surrounded by his crew. They were fighting for everything. For Earth. For humanity's survival. And for the memory of all those who had been lost. The X-9 interceptors were humanity's secret weapon, but they were not invincible. Each ship was taking its own risks, pushing the limits of their phase-shifting technology. Every time they phased into an enemy vessel, there was the possibility that the technology could malfunction, or that the ship could be destroyed in the process. Yet, the crews of the X-9 ships showed no fear. They pressed on, knowing that their actions were humanity's last hope. Captain Carter watched as one of the interceptors, the Valor, phased into a Council dreadnought and began to tear through its interior. He held his breath as the ship's shields flickered, and then, with a sickening crack, the Valor disappeared in a brilliant explosion, leaving nothing behind but scattered debris. It was a devastating loss, but the impact of that sacrifice was not in vain. The Valor had done its job, and now, the Council's dreadnought was nothing but a burning wreck in space. Carter's heart tightened as the reality of the war hit him. Every victory came at a cost, and every step forward meant more lives lost. But he could not afford to let grief take hold, not now, not when so many depended on him. He turned to his crew, his face set with determination. "We fight for them," Carter said, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "We fight for Earth. For our families. We can win this. We will win this." The crew rallied behind him, their resolve solidifying. They had lost so much, but they had not lost everything. And now, with the X-9 interceptors, they had a fighting chance. As Carter watched his crew work, he realized that the bond between them had been forged in the fires of war. The sacrifices, the losses, and the countless dangers they had faced together had created a connection that could never be broken. They were no longer just soldiers fighting to survive, they were a family, united by a common cause. Each one of them knew what was at stake, and they were willing to face the unimaginable to ensure humanity's survival. As the X-9 interceptors continued to phase through the heart of the Council's fleet, the tide of battle began to shift. The Council's once formidable armada was now in disarray. Their warships were falling one by one, each destroyed by the precision of the X-9's phase-shifting technology. The surprise of this new weapon had thrown the Council off balance, and they were struggling to adapt to an enemy that fought in a completely unexpected way. But even as the battle turned in their favor, Carter knew that the war was far from over. The Council would not give up easily. They would retaliate, and they would do so with everything they had. But the X-9 interceptors had given humanity a fighting chance. They had given Carter and his crew the hope they so desperately needed. And with that hope, they would continue to fight. For Earth. For their future. For their survival. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of destruction. After days of brutal conflict, the battle between humanity and the Galactic Council had reached its apex. The Council had underestimated Earth, but now, as the last remnants of their mighty fleet faced the humans' final push, they were prepared to deploy their ultimate weapon, a creation that even humanity's greatest minds could not have anticipated. The Supreme Counselor, desperate to save the Council's crumbling empire, activated an AI-controlled warship, a vessel designed to be the pinnacle of artificial intelligence in combat. This warship, known as the Excalibur, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It could think and act faster than any human, processing data at lightning speeds and adapting to the battlefield with ruthless precision. It was the embodiment of AI supremacy, unfeeling, calculating, and unyielding. The Excalibur's mere presence sent a chill through the human fleet. This was no ordinary weapon, this was an intelligent force of nature that seemed unstoppable. Its sleek black hull shimmered ominously in the darkness of space as it moved forward, ready to crush humanity once and for all. The stakes had never been higher. The Excalibur's core systems were linked directly to the Supreme Counselor, who could control it with a thought. With its enormous firepower and near-perfect defense, it was designed to be a weapon of final judgment. If humanity couldn't defeat this new threat, their fight for survival would be over. The war would be lost, and Earth would fall into the hands of the very empire that had sought to destroy them from the beginning. The battle that followed was nothing short of cinematic. The Excalibur launched itself toward the human fleet, its AI-controlled weapons firing with deadly accuracy. The human ships, despite their advanced cloaking devices and superior tactics, were forced to respond with everything they had. Captain Blake Carter's heart pounded in his chest as he stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching the glowing screen in front of him. "All ships, prepare for the final assault." Carter's voice was steady but filled with urgency. The final phase of the battle had begun. His crew, battle-hardened and resolute, knew that this was the last stand for humanity. They had fought long and hard to protect Earth, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to keep their world safe. The human fleet began their daring assault on the Excalibur. Cloaking devices engaged, human warships disappeared from view, only to reappear at the most opportune moments, launching precise plasma barrages at the AI warship. The Excalibur retaliated with incredible speed, its weapons slicing through the darkness as it unleashed a hellstorm of energy blasts. The space around them became a deadly dance of explosions and near misses as the human fleet and the AI warship played their game of cat and mouse. The human fleet wasn't just using their advanced technology, they were relying on their creativity, their ability to think outside the box, and their determination to win. The Perseverance and the remaining interceptors weaved through the chaos, using every advantage they had. Plasma weapons fired in quick bursts, cutting through the dark emptiness, while cloaked ships emerged from the shadows, only to vanish again moments later. It was a battle of wits, of human ingenuity versus cold, unfeeling AI efficiency. The Excalibur was fierce, but the human fleet's unpredictability was its greatest weapon. The AI warship's core systems were designed to outmaneuver anything humanity could throw at it, but it hadn't accounted for the power of human spirit, something that the AI could never replicate. Captain Carter's heart raced as the Excalibur's fire began to intensify. The human ships were taking heavy damage. Several had already been destroyed, their remains floating in the cold vacuum of space. But Carter's resolve remained firm. "We can do this," he muttered to himself, gripping the armrest of his captain's chair. For Earth. The final assault was a do-or-die moment. Carter knew that if they couldn't disable the Excalibur soon, they would lose everything. The Perseverance had sustained significant damage, and its shields were weakening. The crew, exhausted and battered, pushed on with grim determination. As the battle raged on, Carter saw a glimmer of hope. The Excalibur was vulnerable, just for a moment. A small crack had appeared in its defensive systems. This was their chance. "All ships, focus on the core. Now." Carter barked, urgency in his voice. The remaining interceptors, piloted by the bravest of humanity's warriors, rushed forward in a last-ditch attempt to strike the Excalibur at its weakest point. Carter could feel the weight of the decision on his shoulders. It was all or nothing. There was no turning back now. He steeled himself for the battle's final blow. But as they closed in, the Excalibur launched a devastating counterattack. Its weapons hit the Perseverance with such force that the ship lurched violently, sending crew members flying across the bridge. The lights flickered and alarms blared as the ship's systems struggled to stay online. Carter held on tight, but the ship was taking heavy fire. His crew was fighting valiantly, but the assault from the Excalibur was relentless. As they drew closer to the core, Carter felt the pressure mounting. Then, just as they were about to deliver the final blow, disaster struck. A direct hit to the Perseverance's central reactor sent shockwaves through the ship. Carter was thrown from his seat as the vessel began to break apart around him. The force of the explosion rocked the ship, and for a moment, everything went dark. Carter's vision blurred, and he felt his body go limp as the ship's power faltered. He was losing consciousness. But even as the world around him spun out of control, he heard the voices of his crew. Their unwavering loyalty, their sacrifices, their determination, it fueled him. He knew they couldn't afford to give up now. The human spirit was stronger than any machine. As he fought to regain consciousness, he realized that the final strike would come not from him, but from his crew. They were the ones who would ensure humanity's survival. And then, as the Perseverance groaned and creaked, Carter heard one final cry, "Captain, we did this for Earth." The words were a promise, a reminder of why they had fought so hard, and a tribute to the sacrifice of every soldier who had laid down their life for the cause. With that, the Excalibur's core exploded in a burst of light. The Perseverance and the remaining interceptors had done it, they had disabled the AI warship. The Council's most powerful weapon had been neutralized. As the battle finally wound down, the human fleet emerged victorious, battered but unbroken. The Galactic Council's forces were in disarray, their greatest weapon destroyed. Carter and his crew had faced the impossible and come out on top. But even as the victory settled over them, Carter couldn't shake the feeling of loss. The cost had been high. Many lives had been sacrificed, and the price of victory had been steep. The final battle had proven one thing: humanity's resilience was unmatched. They had fought not just with technology, but with heart, with courage, and with an unyielding determination to survive. They had faced a seemingly unbeatable enemy, and they had overcome it, because they never stopped fighting. As Carter looked out at the stars, the words of his fallen crew echoed in his mind: "We did this for Earth." Humanity had won, but the fight had just begun. There would always be more battles, more challenges ahead. But for now, Earth was safe, and that was enough. The battle had been long, and the cost had been immense, but Earth had emerged victorious. The Galactic Council, once an unstoppable force, was now in shambles. Their once proud fleet had been reduced to scattered debris, their ships and warriors lying broken in the depths of space. Their empire, an empire built on domination and control, had crumbled at the hands of the very species they had sought to enslave. The Council's leaders, once confident in their superiority, now had no choice but to retreat, their power and influence shattered. The human fleet had not only defeated an enemy many thought impossible to defeat, but they had done so with something the Council had never anticipated: resilience, unity, and an unyielding will to protect their home. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were no longer the underdogs, no longer the insignificant species in the eyes of the galaxy's great powers. They had fought for their survival, for their freedom, and for the future of their world, and they had succeeded. Captain Blake Carter stood at the helm of the Perseverance, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness of space. His mind raced as he processed the weight of their victory. The stars above Earth seemed to shine brighter than ever before, almost as if they too were celebrating humanity's triumph. Despite the enormous losses, his crew, his comrades, his friends, Carter couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had done it. Earth was safe. But the victory wasn't just about survival, it was about change. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most advanced civilizations in the universe. And the Galactic Council? They were nothing now, reduced to a shadow of their former self. The days of their oppressive rule were over, and the universe had witnessed humanity's strength. The human fleet stood victorious in the cold void of space, a testament to the strength of humanity. Earth's blue and green globe gleamed brightly in the distance, bathed in the light of the stars. It was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the victory of the humans who had once been mere specks in the vastness of the cosmos. Carter gazed out at the stars from the Perseverance's command deck. The debris from the destroyed ships of the Council floated aimlessly through space, a silent reminder of their failed attempts to dominate Earth. He could almost hear the echoes of the battle still reverberating through his mind. The images of his fallen comrades, the sounds of explosions, and the flashes of light from the intense combat seemed to burn in his memory. But those memories weren't of defeat. They were of a fight that had been won. And now, standing on the precipice of a new era, Captain Carter knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The once untouchable Council had been humbled by humanity's defiance. Their fleet had been decimated, their empire had fractured, and their leaders were forced to retreat, leaving behind the shattered remnants of their reign. But there was more than just the Council's defeat. A new order was emerging, one in which humanity would play a central role. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and humanity had proven itself as a force to be reckoned with. As Carter stood there, his thoughts shifted from the aftermath of the war to the future. The battle was over, but the galaxy was far from peaceful. New alliances were being formed, and humanity was no longer alone in its fight against oppression. Alien species, many of whom had suffered under the Council's ruthless rule, were turning to Earth for help, seeking the strength of humanity to secure their own freedom. Captain Carter knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been solidified, but the war was not the last conflict they would face. There were other threats out there, other powerful forces who might seek to fill the void left by the Council's destruction. And even though Earth had proven itself capable of standing against the greatest powers of the universe, Carter knew that the future was still uncertain. The galaxy was vast, and there was much more to explore. Humanity had fought with everything it had to protect Earth, but now it was time to turn their attention to the future. And with that future came new challenges, new alliances, and new adventures. The stars beckoned, and humanity's destiny was only just beginning. As the Perseverance cruised through space, Carter took a moment to reflect. He thought of his crew, the sacrifices they had made, and the future they had secured. The loss of so many good people weighed heavily on his heart, but their courage and determination would never be forgotten. They had given everything for Earth, and they had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. He turned to his communications officer, his voice steady but filled with a sense of purpose. Signal the other ships. Let them know that Earth has won. Let them know that we are ready to lead the charge into the future. Closing line. The stars ahead shimmered like 1,000 possibilities, each one representing a different path for humanity. As Captain Carter gazed out at the endless expanse, he couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. The battle had been won, but the journey was far from over. The galaxy was changing, and Earth had proven itself capable of influencing that change. This is just the beginning, Captain Carter said quietly to himself, his voice filled with both resolution and excitement. Humanity will shape the future of this galaxy. And with that, the Perseverance and the rest of the human fleet set course for the unknown, their mission now greater than ever. The galaxy was wide, filled with both dangers and opportunities, but Earth had earned its place in the stars. They would be the ones to lead, to protect, and to shape the future of the galaxy, because humanity was no longer just surviving. It was thriving, and nothing could stop them now.